And I am now recording the webinar for all of those who can't be here. And for all of those who are here, you will also receive the recording. So some of the concepts and things that I'll be talking to you about, I'm sure you might really want to go over them again. And also, I want to let you know that I have a bonus for everybody who does stay till the end of the webinar. So stick around, and we'll also have a question and answer at the end. I am really, really terrible at multitasking, so I won't be able to look at your questions while I'm talking. But at the end, I will look. There is a place, you'll see a little folder that says Q&A. Put your questions there as they come up. Write them down. At the end, I will look at that folder and see what questions are there so that I can answer anything that you would like to know more about or don't really, it's not clear maybe. My desire for you, all of you, is that you really begin to look at stuttering in a different way. And by the time that this webinar is over, you will think a little bit differently about what stuttering is, how to treat it, of course, and have a little understanding, and maybe even if some of you are doing research, it will bring up some ideas for research projects, because there's really a lot in this. So before we begin, could you just sort of write in the chat if you can hear me? I'm talking and talking, and I'm not even sure that everybody's hearing me. So write down where you're from, and that'll tell me that you're hearing me. If you could just do that before we get started. And if I don't see any places, I'll know that you don't hear me. Uh-oh. Okay. Thank you, Rick. Nice to see you here. Okay. From Michigan and Paramaribo. I gotta say, I don't know where that is exactly. Sarah from New Jersey. Okay. And from Venezuela. All righty. Nashville, North Carolina, Asheville. Great. Okay, so you're hearing me. So let's get going. And we're going to be talking about stuttering. And this is really, it's a very important issue, because when a client comes to us and they are having difficulty speaking, it's not just their speech, it's their whole ability to communicate. And just what we're doing now, just my speaking to you, you know, it becomes such a difficult thing, and it can really affect the quality of a person's life. And it's really sad that even today, in 2018, this kind of describes where we're at with stuttering treatment. It's kind of dilapidated. And I remember back 10 years, or maybe it was 15, I don't know for sure, I went to a conference, and one of the professors, who was Bloodstein, you've probably all read his book, said that, you know, treatment for stuttering hasn't really changed in his whole lifetime. And that's, you know, when we're going to the moon, been to the moon and back, and so many things have been happening in science and technology, and we're still in the situation of stuttering treatment that somebody as renowned as Walt Manning would say this, and that, we can't really even trust anybody who says that they have success. And that really is kind of a sad statement. So here I am, and I'm coming to you and saying that I do have success, and I guess that puts me on a limb. But I go there with a great deal of confidence because I have been working in the clinic for just treating stuttering for 30 years, more than 30 years. And so I've had a lot of experience, and I'm very happy to say a lot of successes too. That doesn't mean that there's a magic cure, and I'm not going to give you one today, but I'm going to give you a deep understanding of why I let myself go off in this limb. And it's important, and I don't know, put your hands up if you are a school speech therapist, if you work in the schools, because there was a survey. Any hands up? Let's see. Okay. One person. Okay. I guess that, well, this survey was done on school-based speech therapists. And this is what it says, is that the speech therapists in the schools felt that they didn't have the tools to really help their clients recover from stuttering. And let's see. And or maybe the tools didn't exist. And that truly is not really good. And I understand because I was there too. So why do I say it's an dilapidated condition? Because we don't have an accepted definition. I mean, at least if we had a definition that everybody could agree on. But some people say that it's an interruption in the forward flow of speech or a problem of rhythm. Some people say it's a problem of social anxiety. And a lot of people have different ways of looking at it. And we don't agree on what the nature of stuttering is. So it's really difficult, and it reminds me of this picture that I saw when I was studying in university. And I remember it wasn't this exact picture, but it was a similar concept of everybody trying to see what stuttering was, and everybody's looking at a different place blindly at a different place of the elephant. So we only see what's before us, and that's why some people look at it as being one thing, and some people look at it as being a motor problem, and some people look at it as being a social anxiety problem and whatnot. So we do have some therapies that people use, and sometimes there are successes, but we don't understand really the mechanisms that behind maybe if a therapy works, or why there are certain fluency enhancers like choral reading or singing or speaking to your animals, speaking to yourself. What's the mechanism? What's going on behind this? And so often our clients say, oh, well, yeah, I can speak by myself, so that doesn't count. But it does count. It counts in the fact that there's a reason for this, and we have to understand what this reason is in order to really understand what stuttering is. So there's definitely not agreement on the best treatment approaches, and what most people say is that different approaches for different people, and there is something in that, but again, we have to know why, because otherwise we're just going around in circles. And there are several different approaches. Some of these approaches have been around as long as I have, and some are a little bit newer. I think Lidcombe is newer, and Fluency shaping is even a bit newer. And McGuire is newer. I'm sure, I don't know if you all are, there might be students here. I don't know how deeply you've gone into stuttering in the past, but these are the more mainstream ways of treating stuttering today. And the problem is that when people use them, for a large extent, you might use this and you might use that, but what is the connector? What is going on? For instance, what is it about pausing when you teach pausing? What is it? Why would that help at all? And we can't just do these things because we think that they might help. We have to have a reason, and we need to understand the nature. Well, somebody, a wonderful man, John Harrison, dear friend of mine, came up with this statement, I think it was many years ago. And he said that the reason why we're in this condition is because we've been looking at the wrong paradigm, the wrong model for what stuttering is. And some of the reasons I think that, and he thinks that this has happened, is because the emphasis is always on the overt speech. So if you're just looking at the speech itself, you're not going to really learn about what's going on inside and what its stuttering nature is. Very often in treating people who stutter, the techniques that are used don't seem natural, and they're not something that people who don't stutter do. There's something special that we might give the client to do, and they do require effort on the part of the client. So also, the speech doesn't sound natural, and this is really a big problem. So some people do say that they've been through therapy and they did learn how to control their stuttering, but it was so tiresome and it took so much out of them. And I think this is one of the biggest complaints of some people who have done McGuire method, and I've seen it has helped some people just to a degree. It really has, but they say that it's effortful. So this is one thing that is really important. How much effort does a person have to put into being able to speak? And of course, what I keep saying, that we don't understand the mechanisms. Therapy is kind of trial and error, and you try something with a client, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And outcomes are not consistent. Well, we need to be in a better place than this. We need to be in a place where these things aren't happening. And John Harrison came up with his hexagon that, if you are not familiar with it, it really bears looking at much deeper. And he saw that in stuttering, all of these factors go into making the stuttering. He doesn't even call it stuttering, he calls it holding back. And so all of these factors go into the holding back, as he says. And I tend to agree that all of these factors are really, really important. And we'll go into them and see where my hexagon goes a little bit different, but this is really wonderful. And this changed the paradigm. And it really did give us a different way of looking at it. So it's not either this or that, but a combination of different factors. Well, John wasn't the only one who said that stuttering is more than just the motor problem. Ann Smith, who is a very renowned researcher in the field of stuttering, says that stuttering includes not only motor programming, but also systems involved in emotional, cognitive, and linguistic processing. And we're going to go into that quite a bit as we go on. So this is going back in time, and we're going to go back to when I was a school-based therapist. And for some reason, I guess it's the universe wanted me to get into this, because I never intended to focus on stuttering. But I had a lot of students who did stutter. Some, I worked in one town from K through 6, but I also worked at the American International School where I had students of all ages, including the high school. And I had a high school student who I worked with and felt, well, this is how I felt when I was working with her. I felt deep frustration, and she was trying, it was destroying her life, really, stuttering. And I didn't know how to help her. And this is what really made me want to work with people who stutter, because I just said there has to be a better way. It isn't what my colleagues were saying at the time, that you just had to accept that you stutter. If there is a problem, there has to be a solution. And maybe we haven't found it yet, but that doesn't mean we stop looking for it. Not only that, but I was also a mother of children who stutter, and not chronically. But the two girls over here, these are my daughters who are now grown up. And this little one is the mother of these two girls. This is a grandson from a different daughter. But these two girls each went through their periods of disfluency. And I didn't know at all how to help them. It was in the days before I really knew a lot about stuttering, and I was still looking for solutions. This is Romy, and she's now 6 years old, and she was stuttering up even until about 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And she even came to me and said to me, I can't talk. And so I will, as I would go on, I'll show you the difference. I didn't feel that she had a real stuttering problem. I felt that it was just part of her language spurt, and that it wasn't going to continue, but it could have continued, perhaps, you know, if she had begun to really fear things. But I just said to her, all kids go through this, and it's nothing. And just know that the more you try not to stutter, the more you will. So don't try to talk, just let it happen. Don't even think about it. You're going to cause yourself a problem. I didn't use the word stuttering, but I said you'll cause yourself difficulty speaking if you think about it too much. And she's not stuttering now. The others went through different periods in their lives, but none of them stutter now. But when I was, for personal reasons, as a clinician, looking for how to help people, I looked in all different directions, and I really wanted to find out what I could do. Of course, what I did was I had burning questions, so I looked in the books, and I tried it all. And I had one guideline. If something works with 2, 3 people, something must be good in it. And if it doesn't work with 2, 3 people, throw it out. mean, you can't keep trying the same thing over and over again. So I had to find underlying things. What would help? And I went in different directions. I did Gestalt psychology, and I did a fluency shaping, went from one direction to the other. And I must say, some of my colleagues said, Barbara, how could you do this? You're a trader. You're going in the other direction, 180 degrees. But I had to see if something was really going to help my clients. And I did start to see the light after I tried a lot of different things. And this is the light that I want to bring to you all today. And I have to say that I would not tell you this if I didn't feel that it was evidence-based practice. And evidence-based practice means that there is research evidence to support what I am saying. And also having the clinical expertise. I've done it in the clinic. I've been with the clients. I'm not a researcher myself. So I don't have all the statistics to back me up. And I don't have an academic institution behind me to do all the research. Maybe some of you would like to do some research on this. You'd be really welcome. But there are, certain client preferences that we have to take into consideration when we're coming up with a way to treat our clients. So if we looked more in these, as far as research is concerned, what I'm saying does apply to what we know about speech science, or what we know about speech science applies to what I'm saying. So if there are certain things are known to us about how speech is produced, and different research studies, such as how the muscles of the lips and jaws function when a person's speaking, the differences in brain function, all of this, if the research, what I'm saying, has to fit in with what has been found in research. And if it doesn't, then it can't be justified. So there are differences. We have found that there are differences in areas that function during speaking in the brain, and that perhaps there are even structural differences. I had a little boy today who said, why did some of my brothers and sisters stutter, and my father stutters, and how come? And well, maybe there's something in his genetic makeup, and that could even be differences in the gray and white matter. So there are differences that we have to take into consideration. And what I'm saying now also relates to different models of speech production. And, I was really amazed. I'm cleaning up my office because we're moving. And I went back and I looked at some of the things I had written, and I saw that in 1993, the paper I presented at the Oxford Disfluency Conference, and I said so many things like I am going to say today. And one of Herman Peters, a very fine professor from Hall, the Netherlands, came up to me and said, "Did you read this book?" And I said, "No." And he recommended it. I read it, and what I'm saying does fit into Levelt's model of speech production, which a lot of our colleagues, have also said that it is a good model for us to look at when we're treating stuttering. This isn't about stuttering particularly, but it's a model of speech production. So aside from research evidence, there is also the findings that relate to all aspects of speaking have to apply. And we use research that when we're treating other disorders. So why not when we're treating stuttering? All of the aspects that go into speaking, and there are a lot of them. These are just some. These are just the ones that fit into this diagram. There are even more. So we have to take into consideration all that we know about neuroscience and mindfulness. There is so much psychology, how habits are formed. It is something that happens when we're connecting with other people. So we have to look at social science. And then there's the physics of acoustics of sound, physics, biology, anatomy, physiology. All this has to be part of our model. And also, we have to consider the nature of stuttering as we try to find out if research will fit into this way I have of treating people who stutter. And what I say is that the nature of stuttering is part of the nature of speech production. We don't separate them. We don't treat stuttering. We treat a person who is speaking. And so we have to look at stuttering from this perspective. As far as clinical expertise is concerned, we have to be able to listen and observe, listen to what our clients are saying. And this is where what I'm saying really came, because I listened to some clients when I was back in the days that I was doing fluency shaping. Some clients would say, but I can't do my voice. I can't make a gentle onset when I'm thinking about the words. And I said to myself, that wasn't just one person. What do you mean thinking about the words? Because I don't think about the words when I'm speaking. And so I listened and I started to say, something's going on here. Or maybe the people say, I know what I want to say, but I can't get the words out. That one sentence says so much, and we'll learn why that sentence is so indicative of a perspective that enhances stuttering. So we need to use our clinical expertise to gain knowledge and, of course, to support and guide our clients. People who stutter need a lot of support and guidance because speaking is such a part of the human experience. And when we have trouble speaking, it affects our whole human experience. And that's why I hope you'll love working with people who stutter as much as I do, because it's a wonderful population. And there's so much we can do to help them. But their preferences when they come to us are just get me fluent. I just want to be fluent. Well, it doesn't work like that. So we do have to guide them. And we have to show them logical cause and effect. We have to give them something, direction, that you can't try to be fluent and help yourself, because what's the nature? What's the mechanism behind it? So we have to show them what is beneficial, and they have to see it for themselves. And of course, our charge is to improve the quality of their life and to reduce their frustration. So what I've come up with is that stuttering isn't even a speech problem. And I don't see stuttering as being a speech problem at all. It is a systems problem. And the system includes many different aspects that we are going to go into today. So stuttering is really just a symptom. I know people think stuttering is the primary problem, and facial grimaces and lack of breath is secondary, or body tension is secondary, maybe the movements of the lips that you see that are unwanted are secondary symptoms. I think all of it is secondary. Stuttering is secondary. The block is secondary. to the way the brain is functioning when we produce speech and plan language. So this is really important. Stuttering is the outcome of the way the brain functions to create speech. And in stuttering, there is atypical brain processing, but more than that, it is also the thoughts and feelings that the person has when they're speaking. So we have to can take all of these things together. And this is sort of my, this is my hexagon. Let's see, I just wanna, somebody asked how long the webinar is going to be. Well, about an hour and a half altogether, and there'll be time for questions, maybe within the hour and a half or a little longer. I hope you will stick around so that you can see at the end. We're going to get into some really specifics of what I do in therapy. So this is my hexagon, and it is that process is really in the center of it, and all of the other things affect the process. So if you're having the intent to get the words out, it will affect the process that your brain is going to be using. If you have a memory of speaking and it's a difficult memory or an embarrassing memory, it's going to affect the process that you use next time. So all of these things go into the process. And the way that the speech system is meant to work is that it has to function automatically. If the speech system isn't functioning automatically, it's not functioning normally. And there is, in stuttering, there's too much conscious thought about speaking, about self-image, how do I look, how are people reacting to me, and how am I going to talk. So it's really, really important that we change all of this. And all that I learned in the clinic came into dynamic stuttering therapy. That's the program that I developed. And I will be talking to you today about some of the specifics that are in dynamic stuttering therapy and how it functions. It does take into consideration that stuttering is a symptom, and that the thoughts and feelings and the neurophysiological processes are all interconnected and make up stuttering. So I want to say that fluency is never the goal. I don't know if the chat was covering up, for me it was covering up this, but the not is really important. Fluency is not the goal of therapy. We don't ask clients to be fluent, and this is the difficulty. I think the biggest difficulty in treating people is because that's their goal, and we really, as clinicians, have to guide them that if they're going to try to be fluent, they're never going to make it. So I'm just going to close this. I don't know if you can see that or not. So fluency is really an outcome of an ecosystem. And when the ecosystem is functioning correctly, naturally, then it grows from that. And so what we want to do is change the system and make sure that fluency is just an outgrowth of it. Now, Christy Ludlow also sees something very similar to what I'm saying. And so I'm bringing these research studies in because I want you to know that what I'm telling you isn't just out of a hat. I mean, I did see it in the clinic, but there is research and researchers who are saying things very similar to what I'm saying. and that it is a problem of the interplay of planning, production, monitoring of the system. So if that's true, then that's where we have to make the change. And we have, and all the goals that are involved in our therapy have to do with the way speech is being created. So these are all the processes that are involved in how we speak. We have our thoughts. Thoughts turn into language. They're formulated into language. And these thoughts, if we want to speak aloud, have certain motor program that includes phonation and articulation. And then there's the feedback system that it also works. And we're going to go into each one of these different aspects and see how they work for a person who stutters as opposed to a person who speaks fluently. And we'll see that there are really differences. And so our goal is to make it so there aren't differences. We cannot forget that all of these different factors will go into how these processes are functioning. And there is interconnectedness, so that how our language develops affects our thoughts, could affect our articulation, it could affect phonation, articulation affects phonation, vice versa. What our feedback system is affects maybe how our thoughts go. And so it's all a very interconnected system. Don't fear, it's not really that complicated to treat, actually. If you take all this into consideration, and we work with all of it in a very easy to understand way with our clients. So there's interactive and interdependent. One system can depend on the other system in the way it functions. And all of these systems are subject to both external and internal cues. And by external, I mean maybe the day of the week. Or I just had a client who said that the weather different, it was an evaluation, he stutters more in rainy weather. So that's an external cue that could affect his system. Internal cues, meaning I feel uncomfortable, or I'm thinking about what somebody's going to say about me. So these internal cues are just a feeling that the person's having. Are internal cues that can trigger the system to work in a certain way. So I say that all of the elements that go into speaking operate automatically. And this is something that Levelt says too. And this is, I think, really important. He writes in the beginning of his book, and this is not a book about stuttering, but that working automatically enables them to work in parallel simultaneously. And that is the main condition for the generation of uninterrupted fluent speech. So natural flowing speech requires that the system work automatically. Now let's go into each of these different aspects and see the thoughts, which is conceptualization, and it includes how we select the information that we're speaking about and ordering the different information, our attention to our thoughts, and so forth. Conceptualization is, which includes also the pragmatics of speaking, requires our attention. And that's why it's hard for me to look at the questions or the different things on my screen here when I want to talk to you, because it takes my attention away, and so it goes away from my thoughts. Now, in the person who stutters, the attention is divided very often. It doesn't have to be all the time, but very often the attention is divided between conceptualizing and thinking about how to speak. And all of my clients, everyone, says to me, when they think about how to speak, they have difficulty. And when they don't, it's so much easier for them, and their speech flows so much more easily. So it's really important. This attention cannot be divided. We don't think how to speak. So if I'm thinking about something, it's in my head and it's thoughts, and we think even when we're not speaking. It's the same conceptualization, and it does require all the attention. Language comes when we have a concept, and it involves grammatical and phonological encoding. And this happens automatically. So which phonemes are going to come into our head? We don't go looking and choosing them. And certainly the word is not the unit of language formulation. That's why we have entertain, entertainment, entertaining, and we have different parts. And it has meaning. It has grammatical meaning, and we don't think of it as a word. Well, that's in normally functioning speaking. It does progress as a sequence of phonemes. But for the person who stutters, words are often chosen or avoided. So there's thinking about the words in order not to say them, or in order to choose which ones I am going to say. And very often the word is the unit of formulation. So what I'm doing now is when phonemes, my brain is developing a sequence of phonemes, and this is what I mean here, the way it's normally done. So now I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I'm starting to think about the words that I'm saying, and it is interfering with my ability. If I try to go faster, I will have some difficulties, because I started to think in word units there. And you might have even seen it in my eyes, because you can see it in a person's eyes when they're thinking in word units. And there was conscious attention to speech sounds in many of our clients. So they pay attention to what sounds they're going to say, and maybe to try to avoid them, and maybe to try to deal with them or to control them. So in the stuttering mindset, there's a lot of word awareness. As I said, clients very often say, I know what I want to say, but I can't get the words out. Well, I don't know what I want to say before I say it. So there's not that time gap, and we're going to discuss that. And which word should I say, deciding which words are hard to say. This is really a big part of treating a person who stutters. It's not just speech, motor, and linguistic planning, a little linguistic planning. The linguistic planning is a really, really big part of the whole problem of stuttering. The focus of attention on the language as opposed to the concepts. And if we try to treat stuttering by just treating fluency, we might not even be working on trying to help a person to get away from all this awareness of words and the linguistic process. So it's really important that we deal with linguistic processing, and especially, well, with everybody, but even with the little ones, because the little ones could be having a problem with their linguistic processing, which is causing them the issues. Sometimes, as with my granddaughter, every time she went through a spurt in her language development, she had difficulty because apparently her ability to formulate language wasn't yet up to her concepts, and she had concepts there but wasn't finding the phonemes weren't coming to her fast enough. And so we really have to look at this. Also, I have to say that working memory is really important in language formulation. And from when I was in schools and didn't really understand how to treat stuttering, I did notice, because part of my protocol was to do a test of auditory memory. And I found that so many of my clients had poor auditory memory. Oh, not poor, but weaker than the norms. And also, last name was Bird. I can't remember her first name now. All of a sudden, that word just isn't coming to my mind. There's some research that was done which showed that even adults who stutter have a slight weakness in auditory memory and working memory. So the phonation has to be also automatic and subconscious. It does produce a vocal buzz. So there are many things we can do with that voice, and I'm going to show you some voice exercises too, where I work with phonation. But the voice, the normally functioning voice, has a buzz, and if you listen to me as I'm speaking, you'll probably hear that my voice has a buzzing sound like that. And the voice is what creates the syllables, and we're going to talk about that. Syllables are really misunderstood a lot by a lot of people, but physiologically, acoustically, it's our voice that creates the syllable. And that's really important. So the vocal fold vibrations are the foundations or the essence of speaking in the normally fluent speaker. And right now I am phonating and producing syllables with my voice, and it does contain the buzz. Now, for a person who stutters, they are very often pushing out their voice, like, now I'm talking, and it's pushing. So this is a different way of producing a voice. The voice is very often secondary to the articulation, so all the effort is very mouth-centered, rather than the voice being the central part of speaking. And very often, when they're doing that, they're not able to continuously do syllables. Even when I gave the sample that I gave before of me speaking in words, I had stops after every few words. So in some cases, maybe even the vocal folds will be unable to vibrate, and that is actually a block. Articulation. Okay, here's another one, automatic and subconscious. And it really uses the intrinsic muscles of the lips and tongue. And there's a difference between articulating with the intrinsic muscles, as I'm doing now, and articulating with the extrinsic muscles. My extrinsic, my intrinsic. So that's very different, and we need to be able to work with this with our clients to show them that the articulation is not controlled. It's these little muscles that are using it, that are doing the articulation. Now, the monitoring system is also pretty automatic and subconscious. And there might be a little bit of consciousness, but certainly most people are not looking consciously, checking out to see if they're speaking all right, if the word came out. They don't listen to themselves actively, which is what people who stutter do. So this, for a person who stutters, the monitoring is somewhat conscious. And, you know, this is delayed auditory feedback as a therapy technique. What it does help, I believe, is that it keeps you from doing so much of this conscious monitoring, because if you consciously listen to yourself while you're speaking, you really have difficulty stuttering, difficulty speaking, and it makes you stutter. So this delay in the auditory feedback might have something to do with helping a person not monitor so much, and that's why sometimes we do see some instant change. Maybe that's part of it. There might be other aspects of auditory feedback too. But again, we have to understand the mechanism behind it. How is this affecting the whole system? So we see that stuttering is a malfunctioning of the brain in the way the brain is creating speech. And that involves the interaction of neural processing and the mindset, which helps to determine what function we will be using. So stuttering is also a state of being that involves subconscious, and this isn't done consciously or purposefully, but there's a subconscious somehow need, desire, or intent for some reason that interferes with the normal flow of speaking. So we have to make sure that the systems are all working normally and that we help the person not to have that need to use their system in a way that will interfere. And for so many people, if they just realized that the way their intent is wrong, they can make changes. And so our goal is to develop the ability and desire and intent to use all of the elements of speech production normally into a fully integrated system. So this is what we treat, and these are the 6 principles that I use in treating stuttering. And of course, in my workbook, I have all sorts of activities that I have thought of that through the years used to help people. But anything that you do that is going to follow these 6 principles will help your clients to be fluent speakers. And so the principle number 1 is that all attention is on the thought being expressed. And I know that sometimes it is difficult for people to give up thinking about how to speak, because they've been doing it for years, and it's really hard for them. But when you show it all together, it gets to be much easier. But this is a principle. As long as their attention is divided between how am I going to speak and the thoughts that they want to express, they will be having problems. That the language has to develop automatically as a series of phonemes. Very, very important. And this I spoke about a little bit before, but this is really important. There's no time gap. When I'm developing my language now, my brain is coming up with the phonemes that are in my language, and as they come into my head, they are already, maybe there's a little bit in the working memory, but basically there's no gap, perceivable gap. Anyway, I can't say I know what I want to say before I say it. So there's no gap. You don't choose the word first and then go to say it. Natural voice has to be the foundation for speaking. And the mouth automatically shapes the voice into speech sounds. And the sixth principle is everything happens automatically. So everything that we do is just to get the person to have their speaking being really just thinking aloud. And if their thoughts flow, then their speech will flow. So natural fluency is really about automaticity and giving up control. It's not learning speech controls. It's learning to subtract all of these things, the thoughts that I had about speaking and the ways that I was trying to control my mouth. It's giving up, it's subtracting. And our kids, they're so happy when they come to therapy and I say, you know what, I'm not going to teach you how to control your speech. I'm going to teach you how to give up working hard to talk. And that really makes them happy because they're tired of working hard to talk. So this is the purpose of doing therapy with people, to get the brain working naturally and to have them develop a mindset that will support normal brain function. And of course, it's different with different people here. There are very individual differences. Some people, you just need to show them the process. Other people, you really have to work a lot with their mindset. Little kids, usually their mindset isn't so ingrained, and it's much easier to just show them, model how to speak and to enhance, for instance, working memory and get them so that they have the capacity to produce speech naturally. And they need less work on the mental, the psychological, mind affecting issues that we find in older children and adults. So this is what we work on in dynamic stuttering therapy, and I'm just going to show you some of the activities that we do and give you some samples. The first unit is more the model. It's a lot for the clinicians, not necessary to explain everything to the client, to go through everything, but you do want your clients to begin to look at their stuttering from a different perspective, not from the fluency that comes out of it perspective. You want them to be able to see that it's like any other system. It's the elements that are important. So we do some, with each person different and a different level, depending on the clients, how much of the theoretical part you want to go into. Internal speech is that inner speech, the way when you're thinking to yourself, using language. Some thoughts never become language, but a lot of our thoughts do become language, and that's what internal or inner speech is. So there's a whole unit directed to that, and that's usually where I begin because it is so very important. And then how to produce a voice, and then making sure that speech is a progression of phonemes, syllables, rather than whole words. We actually have a whole unit on how to develop your ideas, thinking, learning to concentrate on ideas rather than the words that we use to express the idea. In Unit 6, we break it all down again after they've learned it, break it down, put it together, show all the differences, a lot of practice. In Unit 7 and 8 is practice. And in each unit, there is cognitive work. No unit is just speech processing. It's also the mind. It's also changing your thoughts and going through all of the processes of change. So we really work on everything together to the extent that each person needs it. So let's look at internal speech now. And this is really how I start. So I ask the client to do this little math equation and to give me the sum, and I ask them to do it silently. And if you do that now, give you a second. So we are when you do this, you probably noticed that you had language. Now you all speak different languages, I guess, a lot of you do anyway. So you might have done this in your native language, or you might be doing it in English, whatever. But you cannot do a math equation without some inner language. So this is where what I do, it's silent, but I want the client to realize that there is inner speech, that we do, and that it happened automatically. And I ask them, did you think of the letter? Did you choose the word 7? And they'll say no, because our clients who stutter, they do it just the way we do it when they're not speaking. So I want to point up the things that they do, and I often in therapy show them what they're doing correctly without my intervention, without showing them anything. I want them to realize that they have the abilities in themselves to do the different elements in the normal, natural way. They're just not doing it all together in this normal, natural way. So this is where we begin, and then we sometimes work with memory, working memory, and I ask them to look in the column A and then write it in column B without looking. Remember it. And then I ask them, did you remember the number or did you remember the sounds? So actually, what they were remembering was the sounds, because you say it as you're remembering it, and then you say it as you write it. And some people do have photographic memories, very few, and when you get to the higher numbers, you'd see it's could be less photographic. And very often, especially when you get to longer change, you'll see the client will do something like this. So you see the mouth moving a little bit. And I use that and I show them, and you see how your mouth, you didn't even think to move your mouth, but yet it knew where to go. And this is how I bring in automatic articulation. And then we do the same thing with pictures, and I ask them, look at the picture and silently just describe what you see in one of these pictures. And then I say, and this time, the mouth should move automatically. But automatically. Now, if they're doing this, then that's not automatic. But if they just do, so that's automatic. And you can see the difference. And you can point it up to them, and you teach them that way the difference between automatic articulation and controlled articulation, even when it's silent. And they see that whatever's in their brain, the mouth knows where to go as it comes in. And it has to. The articulation can be with what's in the brain. So if I already know what I want to say, and I'm just waiting to get it out with my mouth, well, then my mouth isn't going to know where to go. So this is really exciting for them. And it's so exciting this in the first lesson, even when we get to silent and aloud speaking. And for the first time, they realize, yes, there are differences. And so they do the same thing silently and aloud. So it would be silently, it would be plate, sat, nest, wrap, name, trap, sip. So I didn't try to say it. If I tried to say it, it might be plate, sap, nest, wrap, name, trap, sip. And you see, even my body moves when I'm trying to get it out. Now, I didn't stutter there, but it was the process, was a process of trying to say it. So it should be might, nap, tip, swap, juice, fine, tan. And I'm not trying to say anything. So we really work on that, learning the differences, learning when it's the same and learning when it's different. To do the voice, to learn to make the voice, I often use this kazoo, which I think I have one here. And you might know it. But what we know, we said that it has to have a buzzing sound, our voice. And what the kazoo does, if you blow in it, doesn't do anything. But as a 9-year-old that I was working with today, he said, I showed it to my friends and they all tried to do. And we discussed that that's because the concept, when you see something like this, you think automatically, I should be blowing on it. And they all also want to do the narrow end, because that's conceptually in their head too. So we got into a whole discussion with a 9-year-old about how we think conceptually. And I said, yeah, people think that. And he realized he had to show me, he says, it has to, the kazoo has to vibrate. I said, well, really, what has to vibrate? He says, yeah, my voice. I have to vibrate my voice. So when you make your voice, so I show them how to make their voice by using this and to get that buzzing. If they do, then it intensifies it in the kazoo, and you can see that the voice keeps cutting out. So this is one tool that I use, not just with children. It's really very good to use with adults as well. And it shows them also, if you're speaking in syllables, and you do like, if I want to say natural activities, and it doesn't have my voice all the way. See, I was doing it sort of as a word, natural activities. I couldn't do my voice. But if I use my voice with the kazoo, natural activities, so then they learn to use their voice in the normal, natural way. Now, for those of you who might be doing fluency shaping, I do not teach gentle onsets. I just teach using a natural voice. And one thing that helps clients use a natural voice is the lip trill. So they learn to use their voice doing that too. Voice has intonation, and it's really important that they can be expressive. He is very nice. He is very nice. And so it's really important to be able to say anything you want with any expression. And if you're using your voice correctly, you can do it. Now, if you're not using your voice correctly, then you have difficulty with intonation, and the more you want to be expressive, the more you'll probably stutter. This is an activity that helps them to see the syllables. So we do the voice, and the voice, as I said, makes the syllables. Second row. And so we learn to make syllables with the voice. Now, if I'm going to say something and my mouth is going to shape it, it would be the same, but it would be E, E-I-E, I-E-L, or give me, why not go, take, it's really nice. And so different syllables with my voice. So we work on that. This is really an exercise in the book that I really love, and it really helps the clients to do it really nicely. And then they learn to connect their syllables, so it wouldn't be, if you're just trying to say the words as syllables, it would be like whiz, kids, just, jump. But that's not how we do it. It's the voice that makes the syllables. So it's whiz, kids, just, jump, walks, close, cork, stop. So it really makes a difference. And when we do work on syllables, and it's like syllables are thought of as the groups of speech sounds, you're running the risk of them sounding really very robotic, no intonation, and the voice stopping all the time. It will be hard for them to speak. So we do all of these activities, and I'm going to go a little bit faster because I think we're running out of a little time here. But these are the things we do as far as processing activities are concerned. And this is what we do to change the mindset. We have, each person comes with their beliefs, their experiences, their memories. And they're very often living in the past rather than in the present moment. And these beliefs, experiences, and memories create thoughts and feelings. And repeated thoughts and feelings create attitudes and perceptions, which creates your state of being as a person, and that affects your behavior. So if you believe you can't speak because of past experiences and maybe some bad memories, you keep thinking, I better try to control my speech. I feel terrible. What are people going to say about me? And then you develop an attitude. Speaking is hard. Speaking is all about fluency. It becomes your state of being, and of course, it makes you work more in that way. I just had a client who, for an evaluation, potential client, who said that he didn't stutter until he was 10, and then he started trying to be fluent, and the more he would try, the more he stuttered. So we have to change all of these things, and that changes the beliefs, memories, and experiences that we're having. So we work on all of this together. And we try to identify and validate the problems that the person is having, admitting and accepting that they have differences in the way that they produce speech. And yes, they stutter, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about, or, it's easy for us to say if we don't stutter, but do try to help them to put it in a better perspective so that they can not be trying, not be trying not to stutter. And then it will be easier for them to change their process. We help them with decision making, and they have to decide if they're going to make changes or if they're going to stay stuck in the same thoughts and feelings that they've had in the past. And we do try to separate the mind from process. That is, as I said, they go together, but we have to show them that if we can change our process, we don't have to stay stuck in the same mindset forever. So we can change process and the mind will change along with it, or we can change the mind and the process changes. But even when I'm feeling tense, I can still bring myself to use my voice. It's easier if you change that mindset, but even when you are worried about something, you can still do it the right way. Sort of like when you're on the road and you just say, I've got to keep my eyes on the road no matter what. I'm not going to be distracted, even when there are distractions coming at you from every which way. So, and they have to learn to also inhibit old responses. And sometimes these responses happen automatically, but a person can make a decision to not respond in the same old way. So we use all sorts of mindfulness techniques, visualizing, meditation, changing the way we say things. Instead of saying, I hope I'll be able to do this, saying, why hope? I know that I am capable of producing a natural voice. I trust my voice. The person who I just worked with just before this webinar, that was his assignment, to just every morning when he wakes up and just before he goes to bed, to say to himself, I trust my voice. I love my voice. And during this session, he said, wow, this is so much more comfortable than my old way of speaking. And so he really was enjoying it. And he has to now really work on changing his mindset and feeling it. I do trust it, not just say it like an affirmation, but I really do trust my voice. I really, really do. I see it keeps working. So we do that, and we also rehearse feelings. Now, a lot of our clients have difficulty with transfer because what they're trying to transfer is the fluency that they might have had with you in the clinic. We don't transfer fluency. As I said, fluency is just an outcome. But maybe the feeling that you had, I feel like I can speak. I feel that I am a confident speaker. So transfer and rehearse feeling that in different situations, maybe by imagining, maybe by just imagining you're in that situation and feeling that confidence that you feel in one situation, feeling it in another. And acting as a new self, even when it might not be your new self, but at least acting that way. And as they say, fake it until you make it. And this is something that's, people have difficulty. Like they say, well, why do I have to change? I'm a person who stutters, and they don't have to change. That's certainly true. They don't have to. But if they come to you and they say that they would like to be able to speak with ease and comfort, well, then they have to do it in a different way that is easy and comfortable. And it is change, and there's nothing wrong with change because we're all changing. And I call it dynamic stuttering therapy because we are dynamic souls and we change all the time, even if we don't think so. Sometimes we do have to just act that way. And we have to realize that process and mind do go hand in hand. Now, brain plasticity is an area that is very much talked about now, and we know there's some wonderful books, The Brain That Changes Itself, and so many, I think that's Norman Deutsch, that the brains can change in structure and function. So even if there is too much wired brain matter in the brain, we can change it. And everybody who stutters is capable of using their voice correctly. It's not like they don't have vocal folds. And we know that most people sing well, so they have the basic apparatus. So they have to have them fire and wire together. And this happens through learning, repetitions, awareness, very important. And that's how new connections are made. In therapy, there are different stages of therapy. There is just understanding the basics and until they become very clear, beginning to change perspectives, realizing that you can't be fluent by trying. That's stage one. And it does go in stages. Some people want to just go from, I came to you and in 5 lessons I'm going to be fluent. And it doesn't work that way. Different people climb the stairs in different rates, but stage 2 is more heightened awareness once they kind of understand the basic processes and beginning to use it in connected speech. And then, of course, there has to be a lot of doing it again and again in order for the neurons to fire together. And going along with that, new thoughts, experiences, imagining. And in stage 3, we have to gradually increase using the new process in real life situations. We don't just go from stage 1 to stage 3. And so many of our clients, they want to do it. The moment that they see that they can do it, they really want to go out. They think they should go out and use it in all situations. And I think that's really kind of dangerous because it's not yet internalized in them, and things will come up and then they'll think that they can't do it. So I think it's better to begin gradually. Short conversations with people you feel close to, longer conversations, longer yet still starting to use it in other ways. Last week, a 9-year-old and we did go out together with the mother. He's not an online client, sometimes online clients. I have them do assignments together in different places. And we start using the process in different situations. And then, of course, stage 4 that we would love all of our clients to get to. Some people only get to stage 3, but others get to stage 4 where they're using the process as part of their subconscious self, and stuttering is just a memory for them. So this is the client.
So for me, page 4 is like the third is the third awareness and stuff. Well, for the first thing, the third awareness, I answered yes. To the first one and sometimes the second, and then for the third I also answered yes.
Yeah, I've been getting my practice in for 15 to 20 minutes usually, and then 5 to 6 days a week. When I practice, it's actually one of the exercises that we did. I like doing the articulation and then adding the voice in when I'm reading. I think that one's helpful. And then Um, you also told me to start practicing bonding the habit. So then I got a picture from my dad, and then I would kind of do something else, and then I would run into it and just like speak about something for a few minutes.
I also want that quietness to there. You know, feel like busy on not thinking about the words, but focusing on my vocal folds, of course. And it's not very easy to talk, of course. But it's a bit weird. It's not weird. It's not weird like how it sounds. It's weird the way I'm using my vocal folds right now. Because I'm using it in a whole different way. I'm not using my mouth at all. This way of speaking, the way we learned in the course, doesn't involve hiding my stuttering or doesn't involve any tricks. It simply taught me to speak freely, naturally, fluently, without any tricks or hiding my stuttering. Became natural to me naturally.
Diction is one of the most kind of central parts of civil procedure, which reflects the question of whether someone has an obligation to appear in any particular court. I don't sound terrible, but when I speak this way, it's just amazing how much more effortless it is. It's amazing how much easier it can be to speak talking like this instead of trying to talk like this. If you try to like control the articulation process, it's just not possible to control the articulation process. It occurs much faster than you could possibly do.
Father, no way, I'm not speaking. You know, I have a stutter. I'm perfectly entitled to say that I don't want to speak because of my stutter. Everyone will understand that he hasn't spoken because he has a stutter. But my father wasn't impressed, and he said quite emphatically that I'm definitely going to be speaking. Whereas this process is more a natural process, more just the way you speak naturally, and it allows you to think of the ideas. Whereas the other courses, they still tell you need to focus. If you don't understand me, you need to focus on how you're speaking. Your mind is taken up by that. You can't really think of the ideas and be free. This course helps you to be free and think free and
how was it a great what inspired all you was to try over affliction, isolation, and spirit. And as long as I stay focused and I don't think of any words and I just think of the syllables, will all come automatically. Like I feel my lips just moving very softly, but I'm not really doing anything. I have to now take the initiative, and if I don't stay focused, it's not going to help me. It's me that has to do it. But I'm very happy that I learned to do it. All my other therapies, like I never felt like this was helping me, but now I feel like as long as I do this, I'll be fine. So at least I have a tool that when I feel like helping myself, which should be all the time, then I have something to use, and I know how to do it, and it's very good. Like it's very logical. It makes sense that if you think of the words, automatically it will come out, and then you block it and get stuck on it. But if you just let the words flow by themselves, if you think of the ideas and so on, then it just happens.
Okay, so these were some samples of some of the clients. So let me put my video on. And I am going to be going into much more depth about how to do this in all aspects of the therapy. I am going to be doing a course for clinicians. It's a course that I have done already for a group of clinicians online, and I've done it for clinicians person to person too. This is the framework. There are going to be 8 live sessions in the Zoom room, but it's interactive Zoom, where you come on and we talk together. It's really like being together. And so we have a chance to really interact with questions and answers and examples. And we'll have a Facebook group too. I have my Facebook group of clinicians treating people who stutter, which is more of a Facebook group for all of us to just discuss things. But this is going to be for us so that you can maybe, bring up certain clients and we'll discuss them and what you're doing with them. And so they'll be just for people in this course or other courses that, we've had too, that just people who have gone through this master course. And everybody who will do this course will get a digital copy of the workbook and clinician's guides. Plus I have some extra worksheets and things that mostly for the mindset part, and that you will also receive. And the first 5 people, I think we just have a couple of, maybe we have a couple of places still left. We'll also have one 45-minute personal meeting with me, which you can discuss any of your clients or anything that comes up or whatever. So 5 people will have that. It's going to be really exciting, and I'm so thrilled that so many people, students and other people who have been working maybe in other areas of speech pathology are interested in working with people who stutter. It is really, really so satisfying. And, I know some days I have a lousy day and everything seems to be going wrong and I can't wait to go to work because then I can really enjoy myself, really. I think that anybody who does this master course is going to really find that your career is going to blossom too with this ability to treat people who stutter successfully. This is the format of the work course. If anybody is interested in really getting their teeth into it, the sessions will be recorded, and so if you should have to miss the course, I know it's hard to commit to 8 sessions, 8 Sundays in a row almost. July 1st is, there will be no session on July 1st. So it goes until June 22nd. And so I know it's hard to commit, but you will get recordings if you should have to miss a course or part of a course or whatever. But it's going to be really fun, interactive, and a really enlightening and rewarding experience. This is the fee for the course, and you can also pay in payments to make it easier for you. There will be a link, I think. I will be sending you you can go onto my website, nostut.com, to register now, or I will also be sending you a link tomorrow. I think tomorrow or the next day you'll receive a letter from me showing you where you can go to register. But you can on my website. There's a page there. So other clinicians who have done this course with me, they have really, really felt that it gave them so much confidence, and they have gotten feedback from their clients. They felt like so many clinicians, the clinicians who I mentioned to you in the beginning, that they just didn't know what to do with their fluency clients. And especially if you're in the schools or maybe even working in a clinic, you can't always pick and choose the clients that you want. And I know that we're all devoted and we want to do the best for our clients. We want evidence-based practice. So this will give you the opportunity to be able to do that and to maybe even be a specialist in the field. Maybe you'll go on to become a board certified specialist. And so that brings us to the end. And this is the bonus for everybody who showed up and stayed to the end. I thank you all for coming, and I hope that your path to being an expert clinician will be full of beauty and naturalness. And I hope that you've enjoyed this webinar. I am going to answer questions. You're welcome to stay on and answer whatever questions that you have. Okay. A certificate of attendance. If you want a certificate of attendance, please send me an email and let me know. I will send one to you. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't give you official ASHA CEUs, but I can give you a certificate of attendance. And everybody who does attend the intensive course will also get a certificate of completion of the course. So, does John Harrison's hexagon, I'm looking at the questions now that were asked. Does it apply to children as well as to adults? Yes, it does. It's, of course, different people have different degrees in which their memories or their feelings or thoughts are affecting them. But even some little children come up with this, I can't talk and I don't want to, and will even limit their speaking a little bit. Sometimes they don't even realize that they are having a problem, and maybe with them there are less problems in perception and intention, but we have to look at it with every human being, with every individual. So the degree for adults or children that it is affecting them is different for everybody, but we have to look at it. And Sarah asks, will there be a copy of the PowerPoint available? Not a copy of the PowerPoint per se, but in the recording you'll see what you saw today of the PowerPoint. And Anna asks, in small children, can we use pictures of animals, for example, for practice of interpretation? Sure, you can use anything. And I hope that you will use different materials. As clinicians, you don't have to use exactly the activities that I use. I will show you in the course how I use all the different activities and the things that I have thought of. But if you follow the 6 principles, you can make up your own activities. Sometimes it's good to follow the book first until you start to, feel that you really have your teeth into it, but it's perfectly okay to use any materials that you want. And I don't use the workbook with real little children, except maybe an activity or two. Certainly don't give them the workbook. With the adults, they do have their own copy of the workbook. But with children, little children, they don't, but I use activities that are similar. And so instead of that activity with the chains of little funny shapes, I use little discs of chitter, I forget what you call it. It has a magnetic wand that they pick up, and they like picking that up. So I use those little chips, and they build stories with them, and then they do it faster and faster. I don't even think I mentioned this, but I don't treat rate either when I'm working with people. So it's not about speaking slowly. Okay. And Sue-on, have you kept in contact with clients to see if how they do? Yes, I do have. Honestly, I don't have the data for research, but I do have contact with clients. And some of my clients today are the children of children I treated a long time ago. And so I do see that, I do know of a lot of clients who years after therapy have no problem at all with stuttering. And then there are some people who do come back to me because they want a little refresher, or they haven't been using it the way they would like to be using it. This isn't a magic cure, but everybody who uses the process is speaking fluently. So our challenge is to help them to have the subconscious desire, intent, and need to be using the process, and to help them to do that. So, so yes, as long as you continue using the process, you are going to be speaking fluently, and many of them do. Okay, so I think that about ends it for now. And I thank you so much, all of you, for coming on Mother's Day and for being here with me. And I wish all of you a very happy Mother's Day if you're a mother, whether you celebrate it in your country or not. And happy Clinicians Day. Let's call it Clinicians Day. Okay, everyone. Bye for now. Going to end the meeting.